I think when we're talking about the issues of trauma in our community, a lot of it goes back to one of America's original sins in slavery. And that sometimes it seems difficult for mainstream America to acknowledge that the Black community in America is by and large a traumatized community. It's interesting how you can give them examples of somebody being in a domestic violence situation or maybe growing up in a household with a violent father, and they can understand how that could impact the behaviors of the child. But when you ask them, okay, well, let's extrapolate from that. You have generations of physical abuse, torture, rape, humiliation, without any potential of escape or any hope. For generation upon generation. Can that have an impact on someone's behavior? And they wince. No, yeah, it does. It does. It does. And the inability to acknowledge that is, I think, a continuation of the victimization that we experience as a community, because they won't even admit that this is a real phenomena.
Right.
And it's like sitting around watching. We got all these geese that can't fly.
Right.
Okay. They're not indigenous to here. It's interesting. In South Africa, you notice a lot of trees, but it used to be a prairie land. There's all the trees are from Australia, South America, Central America. There are very few indigenous trees, but there's a lot of trees outside Johannesburg. Okay. So there's things that don't fit the narrative, and they're inconvenient to America to have to acknowledge the victimization we experienced for hundreds of years here.
Right.
And what impact that's had on us as a community today.
Sister Angelica, would you like to say anything on that?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with both of you guys on you guys' input on generational trauma. What I got most from what you said was just the not being able to take the accountability. I think that's a big issue. When I think about generational trauma, I also think about just the transmission of the trauma experience one has went through. And because, like you said, it goes all the way back from, they call it post-traumatic slave disorder, from things that our ancestors has went through. And of course, they didn't have the tools or resources to express that. And when they had children, ended up being a cycle of trauma that wasn't being able to be expressed. So now we're in this generation of suppressed trauma, to where it's now taking a global effect on the world, actually, because when you see these issues happening, you see how it's playing its role on I want to say like the physical plane, just in our environment and what we do on a day-to-day basis, what our children are doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's really unfortunate. I think it also comes to, again, like you stated, just being able to take accountability and being aware that, hey, I may not have grew up with this trauma, or I didn't cause this trauma on myself. However, I am aware of this trauma. So I'm going to take that first step to fix it by dealing with things that I'm going through personally. And I think as a young mother, and things that I've been through growing up, seeing that it really wasn't my fault, just seeing what my mom and my dad and what they went through. You see the cycle. It's really a continuous cycle that you have to make the decision to break. So, we just gotta want to make that decision to break it. Sometimes it starts with one person, just being able to be like, hey, I see the issues, let me stop it here.
Right.
And it's stop by stopping those behaviors. It also comes to addressing some of the behaviors you have, and that doing that self-analysis with self.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. And, just touching on something that you talked about was the term generational trauma. Like you were saying, when was doing some research, it was saying that the term generational trauma actually came out of studying those who came out of the Holocaust. And so that right there touches on the fact that, so our 400 years, you couldn't have You couldn't have come up with this term. You're going to come up with, and this is not to, side shuffle the Holocaust, but as Dr. Khalid said, we paid a hell of a cost for 400 years. And so, yeah, if we can talk a little bit about what you talked about recognizing our trauma, right? So to a large degree, we kind of like normalized where we don't even recognize that certain things that we do. Can you talk on that?
Yeah, sometimes, bottom line, it enters our subconscious, especially when they are exchanged for values and norms that have been taught to us. Now, I can tell you just like one that's very easily that everyone here can relate to, but when you really think about it, is it logical?
Mm-hmm.
This is the example. As a person of color driving in your car and you hear a police siren, how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Most people of color will tell you they feel some type of anxiety.
Yeah.
No matter how they're driving, no matter what they've done, because that trauma has been placed upon them, that anxiety has been placed upon them because of established norms in your culture of beware.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.